So, how realistic are video games when it comes to terrorism and counterterrorism? Now, full disclosure, I don't play video games. I don't play computer games, maybe with the exception of solitaire once in a while. And so perhaps I'm the last guy you want to hear from when it comes to a review of a video game put out by, of course, the famous Tom Clancy, who's done an awful lot of work in sort of national security type things. And there's this video game called Splinter Blacklist, which is very much in the counter-terrorism vein. So what appears to be happening is that there's this shadowy group called the Engineers, which is carrying out what appears to be a bunch of attacks. There's reference to oil platforms on fire, which means I guess they're attacking energy installations. There's talk about a crack team of commandos or something that is not going to waste their time playing defense. They're going to play offense. They find high value targets they're going to eliminate. There's something called a blacklist. There appears to be what looks like perhaps the use of torture to obtain information. They talk about dirty bombs and nuclear and hostages and stuff like that. So how realistic is all this stuff? Well, not having been a Joint Task Force 2 here in Canada commando, it's hard for me to say. I never was Special Forces, so I'm going to take a pass on that. But there are a few things about this video game that kind of bother me. Number one is that it almost seems to embellish and kind of, pump up the capabilities of terrorist groups. Talk about this shadowy group called the Engineers. Well, yeah, some groups are more shadowy than others. Many groups we know an awful lot about, like Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, and things like that. This notion of using dirty bombs and nuclear bombs, this is something that, we used to look at in the 2000s and 2010s in our analysis. Could Al-Qaeda get a nuke? Were they experimenting with radiological equipment to make so-called dirty bombs? But I think what bothers me about the game is that if you look at it from what the terrorists are doing, it almost seems like there's no limits. It's like they're completely capable of doing whatever they want, whenever they want, to whoever they want. In other words, they seem to be this super force. It's almost like this race of, gigantic beings that has the technological capability as well as the freedom to go anywhere in the world and cause mayhem and death and destruction through the use of terrorist attacks. And that's kind of what bugs me. Now, I'm not a Killjoy. If you enjoy playing video games, fill your boots. And this seems to me like a pretty exciting game as far as video games are concerned. Like I said, I don't play them, I don't know. But do we really want to enter a world, albeit fictitious, I don't say this is real, whereby the bad guys are kind of portrayed as this almost invincible menace? No, I'm going to assume, not knowing anything about the game, that the Blacklist guys, the guys that are killing the terrorists, are probably superior, because I'm assuming they're going to kill a lot of the bad guys, kill a lot of the terrorists, and yet it seems to me that's not quite good enough. Yes, there are commandos and special forces that go around the world, and they're not playing defense, they're playing offense, they're identifying people and targeting them, and if necessary, lethally, to prevent them from blowing things up and killing people. But I don't like it when the people that do cause these types of events, i.e. terrorists, are portrayed in such a way as they're some kind of superheroes, or maybe super anti-heroes is maybe a better word for that. They're not these incredibly impressive figures that are able to do whatever they want whenever they want. It doesn't work that way. So my advice to you, by all means, enjoy the game if that's the kind of thing you do, but don't take away the message that A, terrorists are some kind of incredibly powerful, almost undefeatable people. A, they're not. And B, don't walk away with the impression that the only response to terrorism is special forces. This is what has led us to this notion of a war on terrorism, a term I can't stand. And I wrote a whole book on it, An End to the War on Terrorism, back in 2018. The primary response to terrorism is security, intelligence, and law enforcement agencies, not the military. Not to say the military doesn't have a role, it does. But games like this kind of point to that as being the predominant role. I don't think that's very, very helpful. Anyhow, That's what I think about Splinter Cell Blacklist by Tom Clancy. Again, if video games are your thing, I hope you have a hell of a time playing it. I don't. And I'm sure you can differentiate between reality and non-reality. For what it's worth.